Captain, the dog who waited until the end. He wasn't much to look at the first time I saw him. His fur was patchy, his ribs slightly visible through a body that had clearly known hunger, and there was a strange kind of silence in his eyes. Not fear, not eagerness, just silence. He sat at the far end of the shelter, tucked into the corner like he didn't want to be noticed, or maybe he was simply tired of being seen and then passed by. They called him Captain. No one knew why. He had no collar when they found him wandering near the old railroad tracks. Just a dog, alone, in the cold, forgotten, like so many things are in this world. I hadn't planned on adopting a dog that day. I wasn't even sure why I went into the shelter. Maybe I just wanted to hear something breathe that didn't come with expectations. Maybe I was lonely. Maybe I was broken and looking for a reflection of that brokenness somewhere else. The war had left a lot inside me that didn't make sense anymore. Flashes of noise that came out of nowhere, nightmares that waited just beneath sleep, the quiet guilt of coming home when others didn't. The world felt too loud, too fast, too full of people who didn't know what silence really meant. But there he was, this creature that sat so still, as if he'd learned that moving only brought disappointment. Something about him felt familiar, and without thinking much more, I found myself signing the papers. The first night I brought him home, I expected distance. I expected him to find a corner and stay there. But he followed me from room to room, not close, not demanding, but always just there, like a shadow that didn't quite know if it was allowed to be real. When I turned off the lights, he lay down beside the bed, didn't make a sound. At 2:17 a.m., I woke up gasping, the dream still clawing at the edges of my mind, sweat soaking through my shirt. And then I felt it, a weight at the edge of the bed. He had jumped up silently, crept closer, and placed his head gently on my chest. His body was warm, solid, alive. And in that moment, something inside me exhaled for the first time in years. We didn't talk, of course not. But he listened better than any human I had ever met. Days turned into weeks, and the silence between us became something sacred. He learned my rhythms. I learned his. When I reached for the door in the morning, he'd trot ahead of me, knowing we were going to the bus stop. He sat patiently beside me until the bus arrived. I'd board, give him a nod, and he'd walk back home on his own. At 5:47 p.m. every day, he'd return to that same spot, sitting quietly, tail twitching, eyes searching the crowd until he saw me. And when he did, he'd walk beside me without a leash, like a soldier falling into step. Captain wasn't just a dog. He was a part of me. A better part, maybe. The one that didn't need to speak to understand. The one that stayed even when the world didn't make sense. I remember the last morning I saw him like it was a photograph burned into the back of my mind. It was March, still cold. The air had that sharp edge to it, like the tail end of winter refusing to let go. I was late. I rushed my coffee. Captain patted behind me, same as always, quiet, steady. At the bus stop, I crouched down, scratched behind his ear and said, "See you later, buddy." He tilted his head the way he always did and wagged his tail once. I smiled, turned, and boarded the bus. I didn't know it would be the last time. They told me I collapsed around 10. A stroke, they said. Massive, unexpected. I never felt it coming. One second I was typing, the next, nothing. Darkness. Silence. When the news reached my sister, she flew in, arranged the funeral, packed up my things. They took my body back to our hometown, hundreds of miles away. Captain wasn't allowed to go. Maybe they thought he wouldn't understand. Maybe they thought it didn't matter. But Captain understood more than anyone gave him credit for. At 5:47 p.m. that day, he returned to the bus stop. He sat. He waited. He watched every face. But I didn't come. The next day, he returned again. Same time, same place. And again, the next, and the next. The neighbors started to notice. "That's Jacob's dog," someone said. "Didn't he?" But no one could bear to finish the sentence. They tried to take him in. He refused. Wouldn't eat unless he could leave by 5:30. Wouldn't sleep until he'd spent the evening at the bus stop, staring down the road as if sheer willpower could summon me back. Days turned into weeks. Rain came, then snow. Captain stayed. Someone brought a blanket. Someone else left food in a dish. A teenager built a small wooden shelter beside the bench. No one told him to stop. It became understood. Captain waits here. This is his place, his purpose. He grew thinner, older, his fur matted in places, but his eyes, they never lost that spark, that hope, that belief that maybe, just maybe, today would be the day. And so he waited, through spring, through summer, through the falling leaves of autumn. 11 months, every day, same spot, same time. They found him one morning in February. It had snowed the night before. The ground was hard, the air bitter. He was curled up in the shelter, his body still, his breathing stopped. But his eyes were closed softly, like he had simply fallen asleep in the place he loved most. They buried him near the stop. A small plaque was placed there. It read, "He waited, he believed, he never gave up." They say dogs don't understand the concept of time. That to them, 5 minutes or 5 hours feel the same. Maybe that's true for most, but not for Captain. He understood waiting in a way that broke people's hearts. The kind of waiting that isn't just about time. It's about loyalty, about hope that refuses to die even when everything else does. After his story reached the local paper, people began to show up, not in crowds, but in gentle, quiet ways. A woman who had lost her son in the war came and sat next to Captain one morning. She didn't say anything, just sat. The two of them watched the road together, breathing in rhythm. She left an old photo tucked beneath the bench. It was of her son and his dog. No words, just a memory placed beside another memory. Children started to ask about him. "Why does he wait?" they'd say, and their parents would try to explain, fumbling with words too big for small ears. "Because he loved someone," they might say. "Because love doesn't just go away." Sometimes people offered Captain treats. Most days, he ignored them. He wasn't there for food. He wasn't hungry in that way. He had one purpose, one mission, and he would not be moved. I sometimes wonder what went through his mind in those long hours. Did he imagine me coming around the corner like always? Did he hear the buses approach and feel his heart lift just for a moment before it sank again? Did he ever feel anger, abandonment? Or was it just a quiet ache, like the echo of a voice you can't quite forget? The winter months were hardest. The air bit through even the thickest coats. The sidewalk iced over. People stayed indoors. But Captain came. He braved the wind, the sleet, the silence. His legs moved slower. His breathing was heavier. But he showed up every day. There's something sacred about that kind of devotion, something ancient. We live in a world where people ghost each other over nothing, where promises are broken with a shrug. But here was this old dog, weathered, tired, still showing up, still believing in something he could no longer see. They tried to adopt him again, more seriously this time. Animal control, even a rescue group from out of state. But each time someone came with a leash, Captain would lower his head, pull back, and eventually slip away. He never barked. He wasn't aggressive. He just didn't want to leave. I think in some way he believed that if he left, he might miss me. That maybe, just maybe, I would come back one day, and he had to be there. People began to leave notes for him. "You are loved. You are not alone. Thank you." Simple words scribbled on napkins, cardboard, sticky notes, left beside his shelter, pinned to the fence, tucked into the cracks of the bench. And though he couldn't read them, I like to think he felt them, that he understood in his own way. that he wasn't invisible. One night in early December, a little girl came with her father. She couldn't have been older than 6. She held a drawing in her mittened hands. It was crude. Stick figures, a dog, a man, a bus. But there was something heartbreaking in its honesty. She bent down, placed the paper gently beside Captain, and whispered, "He's in heaven now, but you can come stay with me." Captain looked at her. His eyes, already clouded with age, seemed to soften further. He leaned forward, pressed his nose against her mitten for a second, then looked back at the road. He wasn't ready. Not yet. People began calling him America's Hachiko. Some reporter compared his story to the famous dog in Japan who waited at the train station for years. The comparison wasn't wrong, but Captain didn't need a headline. He didn't need a monument. He just needed time. By the time February came, his movements were slower still. He limped sometimes. His breaths were shallower. The old shelter was replaced with a better one, insulated, with a heated pad someone donated. He used it reluctantly, only when the snow came heavy. The morning they found him, the sky was pale blue, the kind of winter morning that holds its breath like it knows something important has passed. The baker across the street came out, as she always did, carrying warm bread and a bowl of water. But Captain didn't lift his head. She called his name. Once. Twice. Stillness. He was curled tightly like he always slept, body wrapped in itself, tail against nose. But something was different. The tension was gone. The waiting was over. She didn't cry right away. She just stood there, the bowl in her hands, steam rising from it into the cold. And then, slowly, she knelt beside him, placed the bowl down, and touched his fur. It was cold, but soft. Still Captain. The town came together. People who had never met gathered in silence at the stop. They brought flowers, candles, drawings. A veteran placed his medal beside Captain's bed. A child laid down a toy soldier, and they buried him nearby, beneath the tree that turned golden every fall. No grand speeches, no trumpets, just quiet, just love. Someone carved a stone, nothing fancy, just a line that read, "He waited for love, and he never stopped believing." I don't know what happens to dogs after they die. I don't know if there's a heaven for creatures who can't speak but know more about loyalty than any of us ever will. But I like to think that when Captain's eyes closed for the last time, he saw me walking toward him, saw me smile. Maybe I knelt beside him. Maybe I scratched behind his ear, just like before. Maybe I whispered, "Good boy, I missed you too." And maybe he finally let go. I used to wonder how long love lasts after the person is gone, whether it fades like a scent in the wind or lingers like dust in the corners of a house, quiet, settled, always there if you look closely enough. Watching Captain, I think I found my answer. Love doesn't end. It waits. It shifts shapes. It softens at the edges, maybe becomes quieter, less urgent. But it stays. After he passed, the town didn't forget. They couldn't. Not after watching what devotion really looked like. That bus stop, once just another piece of forgotten sidewalk, became something else. Sacred ground. A place where people came not just to remember a dog, but to remember what they once felt and maybe lost along the way. Some people left stories there, written by hand, folded carefully, tucked into cracks in the wood. One was from a woman who had lost her husband to cancer. She wrote about the silence of the house afterward, how some days it felt unbearable. But after she read about Captain, she said she walked outside for the first time in weeks, sat at the bench, and cried, not because she was alone, but because she wasn't the only one who had waited for someone who would never come back. There was another from a young man. He'd just been through a breakup. He wrote that seeing Captain's photo online made him feel foolish at first, crying over a dog. But then he said, "Captain waited with more loyalty than most people ever love. Maybe that's why it hurts." It wasn't about the dog. Not really. It was about what he represented. The quiet persistence of belief. The refusal to give up, even when everyone else says it's time to move on. We talk a lot about moving on these days. Letting go, healing. And those are good things. Necessary even. But I think we sometimes forget that there's also a kind of healing in holding on. In remembering. In saying, no, I won't forget. I won't pretend it didn't matter. Captain didn't know how to forget. He only knew how to stay. And maybe that's why his story spread the way it did. Across towns, across states, across oceans. People in other countries wrote letters to the town. A woman from Italy sent a hand-carved wooden statue of a shepherd dog. A class of students from Japan folded 100 paper cranes and mailed them with a note. For the dog who kept his promise. It's strange, isn't it? How a single animal who never spoke a word could make so many people feel something they hadn't felt in years. He didn't perform tricks. He didn't go viral doing something funny. He just waited, quietly, consistently, as if that alone was an act of courage. And maybe it was. We live in a world where consistency is rare, where promises feel temporary, where people change their minds before they finish their sentences. In a world like that, someone, or something, that stays, that believes, becomes not just rare, but holy. There's a woman in town named Marjorie, 82 years old, sharp as a blade. She walks to the stop every week and leaves a flower beside Captain's stone. When someone asked her why she kept doing it, she said, "Because I had a husband who waited for me every day after work, rain or shine, for 40 years. When he died, I didn't think I'd ever see that kind of love again. Then I met Captain." She didn't need more words than that. None of us do. It's been years now. The bus stop looks different. Cleaner, brighter. They painted it in soft greens and grays. The shelter where Captain used to sleep still stands, now with a small plaque above the entrance. This place belonged to a soul who never gave up. And people still come. Not in crowds, not loudly, but they come. Sometimes they bring dogs, sometimes they just sit in silence. One man came every day for a month, left a cup of coffee on the bench each morning. When asked why, he said, he waited for someone. Maybe someone should wait for him now. That's the thing about love. It doesn't always come with grand gestures. Most of the time, it's quiet. It's consistent. It's the coffee left out, the flower placed carefully. The walk taken every morning, even when it hurts your knees. It's presence, and presence is everything. I think we forget how much it matters to simply stay, to show up, to be there, even when there's nothing left to say. Captain didn't need a clock. He didn't need a reason. He just knew where he needed to be, and that was enough. Sometimes I imagine what he saw when his eyes finally closed, whether the world around him faded slowly like the end of a long day, or whether it was sudden, like a light switching off. I hope he wasn't afraid. I hope he felt warm. I hope he heard a voice, mine, soft and certain. You did good, buddy. You did so good. Maybe we all carry a captain inside us, a version of ourselves that still believes, still waits, still hopes, even when the world says to give up. Maybe that part of us is smaller now, quieter, pushed into a corner by all the noise and speed and distraction. But it's there, waiting too, for something to believe in again. Captain reminds us that it's okay to wait, that it's okay to love even after the person is gone, that not all goodbyes are loud. Some are whispered slowly across days, across years, until they settle like soft dust on your skin. He reminds us that love, when real, doesn't vanish. It stays. In fur left on your coat. In a routine you still follow even after it stops making sense. In a heartbeat that skips at 5:47 p.m. for reasons you no longer remember, only feel. They say he was just a dog, But those who saw him, really saw him, know better. He was grief, he was memory, he was loyalty in its rawest form, and he was love. Still is. Sometimes I wonder what makes a life meaningful. Is it the impact you have, the memories you leave, the love you give, even when it isn't returned? If so, then Captain lived one of the most meaningful lives I've ever known. His story isn't just about a dog. It's about a way of being in the world, about what it means to stay, to love without needing anything in return, to wait, not because you expect a reward, but because your heart doesn't know how not to. There's something profound about the way he chose presence over escape. Most of us, when hurt, run. We hide. We bury ourselves in noise and movement, trying to outrun the ache. But Captain didn't run. He stayed, with his grief, with his hope, with the pieces of his world that still held your scent. And in doing so, he became a quiet teacher, a mirror held up to our own hearts. After his passing, something changed in the town. Not dramatically, not overnight, but in small, steady ways. People began to slow down. They talked to each other more at the bus stop. They looked up from their phones. They brought their dogs with them on walks more often. They lingered. There was something about Captain that softened people, that made them remember what it felt like to care deeply, even silently. A woman named Elise, who worked as a nurse in the nearby hospital, started leaving small notes on strangers' windshields, just a line or two. "You are seen. You matter. Thank you for being here." She said she was inspired by Captain, that she'd passed him many times on her way to work, and every time she saw him, she felt a kind of ache she couldn't explain. After he was gone, she said she wanted to carry a piece of that tenderness into the world. A young boy, 10 years old, began sitting at the stop after school. He said he didn't have anyone waiting at home, so he wanted to wait for Captain instead. When told Captain was gone, he nodded solemnly and said, "That's okay. I'll wait anyway. Maybe he'll come back as another dog." Hope, after all, doesn't disappear. It just changes form. In the months that followed, the little park where the stop stood was unofficially renamed Captain's Place. There were no signs, no government recognition, just people calling it that, as if it had always been meant for him. Someone planted a tree beside his grave, a Japanese maple. It was small at first, fragile, but it grew. Each year, the leaves turn a brilliant red in autumn, like fire held in the palm of the earth. Children began tying little messages to the branches. "I miss you, Grandpa. I hope Mom comes back. Please don't let my dog die." Wishes, prayers, hopes whispered into paper and left to flutter in the wind. Captain became more than memory. He became ritual, a pause, a breath, a reason to stop running, even for a moment. And isn't that what we all need? A reason to pause, a reason to hope, something to anchor us when everything else feels like it's drifting too fast. Sometimes at night, I imagine him running, not slow and stiff like he was in those final weeks, but strong, light, joyful. I see him racing through fields, ears flapping, eyes bright. Maybe he's found me already. Maybe I'm there too, somewhere beyond what we can see. Or maybe he's just running for the sake of it, free, finally, from waiting. If love is the thing that ties us together, then waiting is its purest expression. Because to wait is to believe, to trust, to remain soft, even when the world grows hard around you. Captain never stopped believing, even when the world gave him no reason to, even when no one came, even when his body ached and the days blurred together. He kept showing up. Not because someone told him to, not because he was promised anything, but because something inside him said, "This is where I belong." There is beauty in that, and bravery. Because staying is not always easy. It takes strength to remain when leaving would be simpler. It takes faith to hope in silence. It takes courage to love without answers. We think dogs are simple. But Captain lived a truth that most of us spend our whole lives trying to understand. That love is not in what we say, but in what we do. That being present, truly fully present, is the greatest act of love there is. So here's what I want to remember. Not just about him, but because of him. I want to remember to wait when it matters, to stay when someone needs me to show up again and again, even if no one notices, to believe that love is not about being returned, but about being given. Captain gave everything he had, and in return, he gave a town a reason to remember what love looks like. Maybe we all need a captain in our lives, someone or something, to remind us that even in the quietest acts, there is power. That even in waiting, there is purpose. That even in grief, there is love that refuses to fade. And maybe we're meant to be that for someone else too. If you ever pass by that bus stop on a quiet morning, with the wind moving softly through the leaves, you might feel it. That presence, that stillness, that whisper of something loyal and gentle and true. It's not just the memory of a dog. It's the echo of love that never learned how to stop.